excellence, African institutions continue to strengthen their position as creators and innovators in the global knowledge landscape, not just as followers. The second of these is knowledge transfer. African universities have experience at translating research into real-world outcomes, into societal good, and that is through SDG-related impact, amongst other things. These institutions serve as dynamic potential partners for leading institutions worldwide, and it is about fostering entrepreneurial spirit as well as driving innovation and economic transformation. The third area is innovative ecosystems. African nations cultivate comprehensive frameworks that support the complete innovation journey. This includes thriving startup ecosystems, strategic partnerships, as well as policies that champion innovation. The fourth area we will examine is advanced skills development. African educational institutions prepare talent for leadership in the global economy. This means mastering emerging technologies, cultivating critical thinking, and developing both deep technical expertise and entrepreneurial acumen. I have been told there is a profound proverb from Tanzania that speaks to the essence of this gathering. That proverb says, "Sticks in a bundle are unbreakable." And this East African wisdom perfectly captures why collaboration forms the foundation of all meaningful progress, and why individual excellence, when unified with others, becomes an unstoppable force for good. This forum also builds upon QS's established commitment to advancing higher education excellence and the global visibility of African higher education institutions. When African institutions collaborate locally, nationally, internationally, and globally, their collective impact is exponential. So this forum challenges each participant to depart from Zanzibar afterwards with strategic commitments and action plans that amplify this collective impact. Over the next 2 days, let us challenge ourselves to find answers to the following questions. What strategic initiatives can be championed to advance Africa's knowledge leadership? Second, what high-impact partnerships can be established whilst you are here? Thirdly, what innovative barriers can be dissolved? What support can be given? Next, what groundbreaking research can be supported or initiated? And last but not least, what can we do to communicate our successes more visibly to a global audience? The continent possesses exceptional talent, compelling vision, and unprecedented opportunity. Collective commitment to action and bold leadership will define success. Let us take advantage of this unique opportunity. Thank you, and let us begin this very important work. So as we get to work, I would like to invite participants to our first panel. And the topic of the panel is Advancing Scientific Research in Innovation Excellence. And this panel will explore strategies prioritizing research and also addressing continental as well as global challenges. Discussions will highlight best practices and also look at sustainable research funding, potential cross-border collaboration, and also international benchmarking to position Africa as a leader in research excellence. Panelists, can I invite you to please take the stage? So let us start with introductions, and we shall start here, please. Would you like to introduce yourself and your organization?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Good morning for everybody. As part of this introduction, I'd like to say that the university's roles are expanding. At the beginning, it was a tertiary education where it offers job-oriented or government positions which have to be filled up after colonization. And now it is expanding to include a lot of things. There was a need to include vocational training for everybody in the country. And then it expanded into research and innovation. And it is expanding also to involve itself in society development. The surrounding community has to benefit from the university. And now we are talking about how it can produce research that can be transferred or translated into business and industry. And because of this, the university is now everything. So now we are trying to go over this specific component of university duties, and that is to expand its research to help industry, business, and in general, the economics of the country.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and good still morning. My name is Bismarck Mzubanzi Kyobeka. I'm the Vice Chancellor of the Northwest University in South Africa. I thought as an opening remark from my side is to latch on to what our principals have repeatedly said on the stage, namely that Africa is rising. Now, I thought maybe it is important as a scientist and an engineer in one person to look into whether Africa is indeed rising in the context of this discussion of today. And as a scientist, I believe figures will never lie to you. And so, let's start. Africa contributes less than 1% of global research output, despite being home to 15% of the world's population. Less than 1%. And if you consider the quality matrix of research publications since 2020, African researchers publish 73% of their work in Q1 and Q2 journals. And this obviously compares very well with the global average of 73%, reflecting a comparable quality despite low output numbers. So what does that tell us? It tells us that there is excellence in Africa's researchers, albeit the numbers are quite small. So those that can manage to produce good work, they do, and they do it well, well comparable to their international counterparts. But you need much more of them to come on board. For African research publications, 53% are with the international collaborators, and only 19% of those publications are with local counterparts. What does that tell us again? it says we place very little importance in working together. You spoke of a proverb about sticks that are bound together being unbreakable. We place, the figures are saying, we place little importance in national collaboration and research. And we think it is very, very important to collaborate externally. Yes, it is for purposes of internationalization of higher education and research and innovation. But it can't be done at the expense of local and domestic collaboration. The next set of figures takes us to the QS World Rankings for 2025. The average of the top 20 universities in Africa is ranked at 653, compared to 26 in the Americas, 41 in Asia, 36 in Europe, 116 in Oceania. The highest ranked university in Africa, being the University of Cape Town, is at 171, with only 7 African universities in the top 500. Now, is Africa rising from those numbers? And in the context of this discussion, can we say Africa is rising? I don't think so. I think we have a lot of work to do to qualify the statement Africa is rising, in particular in the context of what we're discussing today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we go to the next panelist, please?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. I believe there are great opportunities, especially in Africa, for the research. This morning in the panel session, opening remark, we hear that Africa contributes to less than 2% of the global research output, despite hosting about 15% of the world population, as my colleague mentioned. And that's clearly indicate there are great opportunities for the research in Africa. However, how can we achieve that? I think there are different mechanisms to achieve that. What I believe the important things in achieving the research or increasing the research outcomes for Africa is research collaboration, especially cross-border and or even in international collaboration between African universities and research center and global university. And that's, I think, will lead to maximize the research outcomes and even the use the infrastructure that available in both institutions. There are, I think, best practices in international collaboration that led to advance the research. We have a good example, for example, a collaboration between UA University and Sultan Qaboos University is a unique model in terms of the outcomes of the research. During last 5 years, faculty members and researchers from both institutions published more than 300 papers according to the Scopus. So clearly from those numbers, there are opportunities for the collaboration. If we start to initiate a mechanism for potential collaboration between African universities and the global university, that I think will lead to enhance the research outcomes of Africa, and that will be aligned even with the population size in the country.
Thank you. The speaker there was Professor Ahmed Al-Risi, Acting Vice Chancellor of UAE University. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good morning, all. My name is A.K. Suresh. I am Vice President Academic Administration at IIT Madras, Zanzibar. Prior to taking up this position about 6 months ago, I was at IIT Bombay, where I was the Deputy Director of Academics and Infrastructure. Veronica has set the stage well for this discussion, and I will take a few minutes to, put forth some points in connection with the theme of advancing scientific research and innovation excellence. And you may please stop me if I'm taking too much time. Yeah. To begin with, I would like to create a framework for discussion of the topic at hand. When we talk about research, and innovation is always bound up with research, it can be of two kinds. One is of the fundamental kind, in which we are looking at advancing knowledge, opening up new frontiers, opening up new fields of inquiry, etc. And the proficiency of any community or country or institution in the arena of fundamental research is usually measured in terms of metrics such as number of research papers, citation indices, significant awards won by the faculty or scientists of the region, and so on. The fundamental characteristic of this type of research is that it is universal in its applicability, and it is not region specific, it is context insensitive. The second kind of research is of the applied kind, which contributes to the health and efficiency of industry, boosts productivity, improves the efficiency of processes and services in corporates, government, and civic society. This contributes to GDP in a very direct manner and also to Human Development Index, and is recognizable from the productivity of industrial and agricultural processes, health and environment and the Human Development Index, efficiency of processes such as the efficiency of processes at the civic society government interface, ease of availability of services, reliability of services, etc., etc. Now, a characteristic of this type of research is that it is very context sensitive. It is what is applicable for the same problem. For example, you take the problem of urban transportation. A solution that might work in Germany or the US may not be appropriate for Zanzibar, for instance, because there are local factors that need to be considered, the lay of the land, the culture of innovation here, and so on and so forth. So these two have to be juxtaposed against one another. While we, for convenience, talk of research as being fundamental or applied, they are themselves intricately bound up with each other. You cannot have one without the other. And therefore, this is somewhat artificial, but it is, for academic purposes, it is convenient to think of these two types of research. With that background, if we look at the research and innovation scene in Africa, some statistics have already been given. Africa's share of the world population is, in the region of 15 to 17%, which is very similar to the population share of India and China. But in terms of research output, Africa contributes about 2% measured in terms of publications, or, monographs, and so on and so forth, conferences and so on. Whereas India is a little higher, about 6%, and China is at 23-25%. In terms of patents, the situation is even more bleak. The African continent as a whole contributes only about 0.1% to the world's patents, whereas China contributes 46.5%, India contributes something around 3%. And in terms of why is this disparity between countries which have a similar share of the world population, but are so different in terms of their research productivity? Is it the so I looked at some figures for investment. Now, the African Union set a target of 1% of GDP as the research contribution of the countries, but most countries are well below this in the African region. Sub-Saharan Africa averages at about 0.4% of GDP. In the USA, it is 3.1% of the GDP. India is not very different from Africa because it's at 0.8% of GDP. And China, of course, it's at 2.6% of GDP. So this tells us a few things. One is Africa, if you look at research productivity, patent productivity, etc., as a continent is punching far below its weight. Why is this? Investment is certainly one issue. But if you compare with the Indian situation, where the percent of GDP that is invested in research is not all that different from countries like Egypt or South Africa, it appears that investment is not the whole story. At a somewhat or similar share of GDP invested in research, India's research productivity is much larger. So this tells us that while investment is important and it has to increase, the way the whole R&D activity is orchestrated is important, and this needs careful consideration. We have to look at the way the research activity is organized, the institutions, how the R&D ecosystem is administered, how it is developed, and so on and so forth. So let us, if we take a few minutes to look at the institutions, let us first look at academia, which is widely recognized as the germinating ground for ideas. Keeping in mind the distinction between fundamental and applied research that I mentioned at the beginning. Now, one way to measure the standing of research institutions, academia, is to look at rankings. And if we look at the QS rankings, there is only one university, the University of Cape Town, in the top 200 worldwide. And if you take the top 500, there are only 7 African universities there. Now, this is far below countries like India and China and so on. Now, recent years have seen the emergence of some centers of excellence. For example, the African Institute of Mathematical Sciences in South Africa, NMAIST in Arusha and elsewhere in the continent. Such institutions have come up, and they are concentrating on research excellence. They are mostly in the postgraduate and PhD space and research. Now, one argument that is worth pondering about is that we are collecting all these very bright minds in these institutions. Should the benefit of their knowledge or expertise not reach the undergraduate education, because that is where you catch the people young? And therefore, is there a case for these elite institutions also investing in undergraduate programs? That is one question that arises.
And we'll come back to that in a second, because there is a
Then I will
broader
quickly
discussion
wind up.
point.
So the other points I had to do with the funding mechanisms in the African R&D. Maybe we can discuss that in the second round.
Yeah.
And once you have set up an R&D ecosystem, how do you translate the fruits of R&D to the marketplace? That is where the importance of the ecosystem comes in. And finally, I have a few action points, if you like, summarizing these points.
We'll come to the action points in a moment, and we'll let the final speaker make a statement.
Thank you so much. Didas Mugang Kayura, my name's, and I want to, first of all, agree with my colleagues on a number of points, and actually building on what those who spoke in the morning alluded to most of the time about African research landscape. And I wanted to take it to a different perspective. I know each country, each university has its own specific kind of endeavor. I know research is universal, but also I want to reflect on 3 or 4 themes. One is about the advancing research. We also need to look at improving, advancing, but on what? And on this, I wanted to discuss with the audience about, we are talking about the contribution and how is this counted, considered? Is it in number of, the quantities, output? Is it about quality? And if it is quality, is it also related to impact? And again, taking it further, what is that impact assessed, and how is it assessed? Is it the national impact or international impact? And what is the difference? If I may take the example of my University of Rwanda, University of Rwanda, which is the only public university in Rwanda, in the family of more than 35 universities in Rwanda. and carrying that. Now, my government expects a lot of impact from the National University of Rwanda, the University of Rwanda. And now, if I'm looking at the impact, I may look at it first on how much I'm contributing to advancement or the progress or the GDP or the development of the country first. But at the same time, I'm also challenged to comparing my impact, looking at my impact vis-a-vis the international, perspective. And how am I going to do this? Is looking at how am I ranked in those ranking institutions, but also on the international recognized journals. And then that is going to bring me to the perspective of Africa. Do we have how we can rank ourselves in terms of impact locally in Africa, or bring it even lower? Do we have national ways of ranking our universities by impact locally? So, and now that is, because if I'm designing my research agenda as a university, I'm looking at various things. First of all, I will look at my local context and then take it to regional landscape, and then take it further to continental, and then look at myself globally, whether I'm impacting or not. And then I had talked about the high impact journals, Web of Science, that family of Scopus, and are we fitting anywhere in the African perspective? Where do we want to be, and why should we? And if we are going to be ranking internationally, are we competitive enough to be now competing with world universities that are even having an upper hand when it comes to high impact journals? Are we competitive enough? Can we fit in? Do we have a way out of that? And then, if we are designing our research agenda, individual universities, regional, continental, how do we design that? I know we are having that challenge of taking ourselves, Prof said it properly, maybe we are punching beyond our weight. How can we make ourselves even more relevant? In the speeches in the morning, they were talking about finding a way of benchmarking ourselves, not going beyond what we can afford, but looking at ourselves, especially from the perspective of how much we are impacting locally. Are we even significant at home? Are we doing anything to change the livelihood in our local areas? And this is how, unless we want to still keep ourselves as ivory towers without necessarily connecting with the local communities, then if we want to go that way, then we should be looking that far. But if we want to start, if we want to impact, actually, we start from home and we see how much we are being impactful in our local communities. But even then, we have to develop strong infrastructures, strong assessment criteria that is going to be showing whether we are improving in our research endeavors or not. And by this, I want to appreciate, in Africa, we have this kind of family, the Arua family, the research-led universities family. And the encouragement there is mainly looking at South-South cooperation, and I'm getting to the last point of collaboration to be that impactful. If we are to compare ourselves, like in the family of Arua or even beyond, how are we collaborating? And how are we assessing ourselves when it comes to impact? Are we doing something great? Are we impacting locally? If we come to centers of excellence, the Prof was alluding to, what are they doing? How are they impacting? Are they leading us to an improvement? And as I conclude, I want to appreciate that we all of us know about these World Bank funded centers of excellence. And if we can assess them, how much have they impacted locally? Before even we look at, yes, high impact journals and our publications there, but no, look at the numbers of graduates we are getting, their research, what are they looking at? Are they addressing local issues? Are we having local solutions to our local issues? Even if, and this is my submission, even if it wasn't even to go to international ranking right away, but if I'm addressing local issues, then I'm growing. I'm seeing myself as a growing institution, as an impacting institution to my local communities. Maybe I rest it there.
Thank you.
At the moment. Thank you.
So we did identify here some of the issues, which is the suitability of the research, whether it's fit for purpose, whether it's addressing the societal needs it needs to do. But there's also one of the issues that was mentioned by our speakers was the issue of volume and actually producing sufficient research in the continent. We saw the overall share is quite marginal in comparison, even though there are outstanding projects taking place. So the question is, how do we increase that volume? Is this a question of incentives for academics? Are there practical barriers to this? Who would like to answer that particular question? What is the idea for action? How do we get people to actually produce more research and to contribute, considering that a lot of African countries are multilingual? There's so many opportunities for both international as well as local interaction and collaboration. Why isn't it happening, and what can be done to increase those volumes?
Yes, thank you. I think it starts with getting our house in order as Africa, as the continent. And it starts with leadership, of course. So I think we need to realize that by and large, it's how much you put in before you expect how much you get out. Now, my colleague here has already said our investment in research as an African continent, my figures here say 0.4% of the GDP. That is way, way, way too little. So if we want to prioritize research for impact, as my other colleague has said, we must first recognize, and our leaders must recognize, that it would take prioritization also in the budgets. The budget for science and innovation, the budget for higher education, and in fact, the budget for education, starting from basic education, is not commensurate with what you expect from an aspiring developing continent with a lot of potential combined. So we need to look into that. Talking about the funding issue, just look at what just happened recently with the administration in the US. Over-reliance of our countries in Africa on foreign-funded research is also our biggest undoing. And Mr. Trump has spectacularly proven it to us that we are seriously vulnerable when it comes to that. In my country, in South Africa, the biggest, one of the biggest universities, the ones doing very well, WITS, was actually lost 1.3 billion in US funding for TB and HIV. Now that's a lot. That means retrenching more than 700 staff members. Now on hindsight, we say, how did we even get that exposed as a country to foreign aid? So this is a wake-up call for all the leaders to say, if we want to move this figure from 0.4% to the global average, the first thing that we need to do is to think deeper. What is our priority? We must have the skin in the game. We must move more funding into developing our homegrown research. But that also must talk to our continental priorities. We can't be doing research on everything. We need to pick a few priorities, invest in them as blocks in the continent, and then measure the impact. Issues that really plague Africa: climate change, water scarcity, drought, agriculture. We need to pick public health. We need to pick those areas, come together as African partners, maximize the resources, develop more human resources, to get some progress in those and then measure the output. I think that is one approach. So leadership, funding, prioritization.
Thank you.
Yes.
Please go ahead. Yeah.
This is a good question. I need to emphasize here the importance of the prioritizing the contents-driven research, because that's considered a vital for local and global impact. What we need, I think Africa must transition from being a beneficiary of research to a producer of solution. We mentioned previously, or we hear in the opening remark, that Africa contributes less than 2% of the global research outcome. But do we need to increase the research outcome, or do we need to, in terms of number, or do we need to increase the quality of the outcomes that will have impact in the society? And this is what we need to do. And in order, I think, to achieve that, we need to have a funding model that can sustain the research. We don't need the research to be for the short term. No, we need a long-term strategy for the research in order to for the continuity of the research, and to even take the outcome or the recommendation of those research to the next step. So having a mechanism for the fund, especially long term, that will be a great opportunity, I think, for Africa. We have one example, I think, through the collaboration of UAE Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the initiative of Sheikh Fatima bint Mubarak to empower women in Africa. We started research collaboration with 2 African universities. We started with University of Haramaya in Ethiopia. 5 research grants were funded, and we requested, or we put a condition. We need to involve students in those research projects. 2 students from African University and 2 from UAE University. Another one we have with the Gaston Bergen University in Senegal. And the outcomes of those research were presented during COP29. We need such things in order, I think, to make the outcome more impactful for the community.
Thank you. Any other action points that should be undertaken?
In my opinion, several things have to happen. One is, of course, as has been said, the investment in research has to go up. And, I think to start with 1% of GDP is a good target, and countries must strive to invest that much in research. But that is not enough. As I said, you have to create institutions to see that this outlay is usefully employed, is employed where it makes the most impact. There are models in the African continent. There is CSIR in South Africa. There is the National Research Foundation in South Africa. CSIR has about 10% of the country's research outlay. But then these models do not seem to have been replicated widely in the continent. For example, there is COSTECH in Tanzania, which has barely about 2% of the country's research outlay, which itself is small. So proper institutions have to be created for deploying the research funds. And these institutions have to develop processes for evaluating research proposals, identifying thrust areas, instituting a consultative kind of mechanism whereby thrust areas which are on the one hand relevant to the region. I made this distinction between fundamental research and applied research a while back. Now, applied research, I think the local institutions have an advantage because they know what the situation on the ground is, what are the pressing problems. For example, in Zanzibar, it may be water, it may be energy, it may be the blue economy which is crying out for inputs. which may not be the same in some other, landlocked country like, one of the landlocked countries in Africa. So, as far as the local relevance is concerned, I think the local universities have an advantage, and they should be heard by the policy-making bodies in identifying priorities. On the other hand, while we are concentrating on regional priorities, today the world is so interconnected that something that we do here will have an impact on the global scale. Things like environment and biodiversity and genomic diversity, and these are issues where you cannot isolate yourself from the world, and therefore you have to be aware of the impact of your actions in research and development and production, industrial production, on the globe as well. So that also needs to be kept in mind in identifying those areas.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Final
much.
speaker.
I think, again, I agree with my colleagues. But simply put in simple terms, both our governments and our respective institutions, individual research institutions, universities, need to be intentional. And by this I mean, first of all, we need to invest more into homegrown solutions. Being intentional, if we can take the example of China, sections like China, what made them get that high was because they decided to become intentional, and they looked at what they are importing, for example, and then they direct their institutions to responding to that. How can we curb this from this high to this low, or even going beyond to becoming even the exporters of this? If we go that route, if our respective governments, if our respective research institutions get that intentional to responding to those critical issues, then we are going to be getting closer to that demand. But also we have, before we even get that, we need to develop, kind of make it a research culture, create the environment that is going to be leading us to even getting that intentional. They talked about funding, infrastructure, but also incentivizing our researchers for them to get retained, kept where they are, and even enjoying it better. Because what we can witness, and this has been the practice across Africa, when someone emerges as the best researcher, then he becomes a target for other foreign jurisdictions. Why? Because they are going to attract him with enough research funds, kind of rewards and so forth. But what can we do as African institutions, African governments, is to even take him as an advantage, keep him, motivate him or her by investing in him or her even better, allowing him to get incentives from his endeavors, and then keeping him around. If this is answered, then looks for another solution, to respond to another question, and retaining our researchers locally. If we cannot do that, we are likely not to succeed in whatever we go for. And also one last point is strengthening, which has not been the case, and I must admit, even is the case in Rwanda, strengthening our partnerships with industry. Industry finding solutions from research institutions, and research institutions finding solutions in private providers, companies, and taking our knowledge to companies, and companies finding our knowledge from universities and responding to those local issues.
Thank you. Professor Ali, can we have a summary of some of the statements made, please? Yeah, you can leave it to the... Okay, so we'll let the audience take some questions. Any questions or comments from the audience? We have a quiet audience today. We have a question at the back of the room. We'll start here first, and then we'll go to the back of the room as well. So there was a hand raised at the back.
Hi, thank you. It was very insightful. So not a question, but only comment from my side is, while we have said on grants and funding that it has dried up, or Africa needs to probably allocate a percentage of its GDP say 1% or so. But I still feel, in short term, this grant and fundings from the West or the developed nations should still flow to Africa, because if you look at short term, this can be a long-term goal, but in short term, that grant and funding we should still aspire to it. Only thing is we should tie up to an outcome that, if certain universities or a higher education institution is able to do this number of research or is able to produce this outcome, then only grants and fundings will be granted. So that's the comment from my side, that in the short term, we should still look for it. Otherwise, in aspiration for long term, we might miss short term goals. Thank you.
Thank you. And the gentleman at the back. Yes.
Yes, thank you so much. First of all, let me congratulate the speakers for very insightful points raised
Thank you.
today. I would like to comment on two issues. I know one is collaboration. First of all, are we as universities, first of all, ready to collaborate among ourselves, and what are the commitments? Several initiatives have been mentioned, I know. Sarua has been mentioned. I know there are other initiatives like Guru Forum, like PASET, like the Centers of Excellence. But most universities do not commit funds even to pay for annual fees to these initiatives that would really help us, because these are African initiatives. So we have IUCA in East Africa, but some members don't even pay the dues to such initiatives, which would really help synergize things among us. The other thing is the coordination. It would be nice to see something like the CGR type of coordination. You have people working on agriculture with their own consortia, doing their research in their own ways. You have the centers of excellence, so many of them. You mentioned Nelson Mandela African Institute. They're in top 800 because they have two centers of excellence, and then they have another chair, the Oliver Tambo, the Otashi chair. But when do we meet? When does PASET, Sarua, Forum, where do we meet and set the continental agenda that will bring synergy and will elevate outputs and impact, etc., etc.? So one is commitment among us. I know there are commitments about having 1 GDP, yes, but commitments among universities themselves and the readiness to collaborate at the apex rather than having so many different initiatives that do not speak the same language. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Please speak first.
Thank you so much, moderator, and I thank the presenters for brilliant ideas. I just want to raise one issue. We talked about Africa priorities, and we talked about AU priorities. Now, given this audience and those who are listening, if one may ask the experts, what is our priority for the next 5 years as Africa in the context of research? One spoke about China. China, they were able to change the equilibrium from importing, and now they're exporting. What is Africa, you intellectuals and the think tankers? What is Africa priority? If we ask you now, in the next 5 years, what is Africa priority? Can one help us? Thank you.
Thank you. Please go ahead, yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. And first of all, I would like to thank you all for this, nice discussion. And my question is, when it comes to research, we always...
Sir, you are not audible. Your microphone is on?
Yeah.
I believe so.
Yeah.
So I'm a believer that the research should have an impact, and when we look at the impact could be definitely bring something to the community, to the Africa itself. The way we see it, when my colleagues there mentioned that collaboration is very important. In the other side, when we look at Africa it has a wealth of areas that deserve to be focused on research. My colleague has mentioned now priorities. It's important to define those priorities, but also at the same time, there are a lot of areas that deserve focus of research, not just from Africa itself, also from other countries that could collaborate with African universities and come up with something really useful to the community here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid that's all we have time for, so if we can have a summary of the main themes.
Okay, sorry, because, hello? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I belong to the next panel, but I'm here to summarize and to connect the two panels together. This is talking about research, and the other one is talking about how to use research in industry and business. The partnership depends on the quality of research. The quality of research depends on funding and sustainability of funding. Sustainability of funding cannot be attained without focused research. The word focused has appeared in all these talks and in the comments of the people who are listening here. It seems that focusing is a problem in Africa. And talking about my country or North Africa, Sudan, Egypt, even West Africa, Nigeria, even South Africa, you find that people are being promoted on the basis of research which is not focused. Somebody who is specialized in tropical medicine, for example, will write papers on all insects, on all parasites. People who are concerned with general medicine, they want to write papers on bioinformatics, which is not related. We, the group who are sitting here, are the people who promote stuff. And if the staff did not produce focused research on very intricate subject, it should not be passed. It should not be promoted on the basis of that. Why? The theme of this meeting is industry. The theme of this meeting is business, is partnership. People who are in industry or in business, they are concentrating on one product. Someone who is producing papers is not interested in any other business, is not interested in any other research. So if you want people to partner or to have partnership with industry, they have to be focused, very concentrated business research on very small areas. And this is a priority. Priority should not be, for example, it is priority in Africa, women in Africa, or tropical diseases in Africa, but even within these things, we want to concentrate on areas which are very small that can match the needs of industry and business.
Thank you very much, esteemed panel. Thank you for the great comments and the contribution from the audience as well. And we hopefully will continue these conversations going on forward. So I'd like to call my colleagues back to the microphone, as I believe we're coming to break time, aren't we? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica, and thank you, Veronica, and the panel. Please note the change in the schedule. Please note the change in the schedule. The guided walking tour of Stone Town has been postponed and will now take place tomorrow after lunch. The dinner reception will be held today at 6 p.m. on the Hotel Nons. For more information and updates, please visit the QS Africa Forum website. Next, we have a discussion on bridging academia and industry through knowledge transfer. Please welcome Aisha Al-Kharousi, Deputy Executive Chairperson at Modern College of Business and Science, and the speakers of the panel.
Everybody ready? Okay, good afternoon, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here amongst all these distinguished guests today. Our session is about bridging academia and industry through knowledge transfer. And I'm going to dive deep because I'm not going to keep you between our conversation and lunch, I think, is after this session. So we'll start with framing the questions generally. So I'm going to ask each one of you, in your view, what are the biggest barriers preventing effective knowledge transfer between university and industry in Africa today? So we will start with Dr. Qureshi.
The first step that we have to take as leaders of academia is to try to prepare the academia for that purpose. The academia are not prepared in Africa for transfer of technology. Everyone is an individual doing his research, being promoted as an individual, and not very much concerned with what goes on with this partnership, which is new to the continent. Partnership requires that we have to change the mentality or to educate the present staff about the importance of this partnership. To educate them, some of them are very resistant. They have been very old staff in universities, and they were not concerned with that. They were not experienced in that, and they don't know even the benefits of that. The benefit, if it is financial and economic and others, they don't think that is the role of the university. Some of them may, but there is a lot of resistance. We have to lift up the education or educational aspect, training for staff about the importance of this partnership. And later, after that, we have to do some regulations within the partnership, within the university, within the institution, led by the leadership of the institution, to establish, for example, transfer of technology office or transfer of technology college or institute, so that it will continue or be sustainable institution, sustainable presence in that institution. In order to build or to make an institute of this kind, some universities have to take the permission of the Ministry of Higher Education. Life is a little bit complicated in Africa. Ministry of Higher Education is in control of higher education. I don't mean supervision.
So we'll move on to Dr. Hassan. Please, if you can just answer.
Thank you, Dr. Aisha, and thank you, Dr. Ashwin and QS, for the invitation. I don't think this is an Africa-specific problem, I must admit. This is a universal problem. The link between industry and academia has been around all our lives. This is the reality everywhere. I work in the UK. We're talking about this issue 30 years ago. I will give you an example about a good model in the UAE. The UAE has introduced, the Commission for Academic Accreditation in the UAE has introduced an outcome-based evaluation framework, which has 6 components. Employability outcomes, 25%, learning outcomes, 25%, industry collaboration, 20%, research, 15%, reputation, 10%, and community engagement, 5%. When the government, when the regulatory body put pressure on universities to start working together between industry and academia, things would happen. The same could apply in Africa for sure. The biggest obstacle for us, I think, Dr. Aisha, is the language. We speak different languages. We have different aspirations. In our case, we want to publish papers, we want to do well in the ranking. The industry wanted a product solution the second day, same day, the day before. So unless we start talking about the common language between us, we can go forever. And I've been hearing this story about the gap between industry and academia widening or getting closer or whatever for years. The mindset needs to be changed. The regulatory bodies will play a major role. We need to embrace a language which could be understood by everyone.
Professor Ali, you can respond.
Yes. All right. Thank you. We do this more or less same what UAE doing on the Malaysian Qualification Agency. But what we have done from us is a leadership of the universities. What we do in my university is for every subject, we have made the compulsory, the lecturers, they need to bring the industrial speakers in the program. And they need to arrange the industry visit and everything. So by doing this from the leadership, and I believe that we can close the gap between the industries and the university. And that is a big challenge which the leadership should take the responsibility. Thank you.
Hello? Okay. Dr. Sanjeet, maybe you can give us key success factors from your university or other examples rather than...
Yes, so thank you. So one thing I want to say, when we talk about South, when we talk about Africa, we always have to learn a word called Ubuntu, which has been given by Africa. They don't talk about themselves, they always talk about the world, well-being of the world. And when you talk about the technology transfer, it cannot be alone for Africa. You know, you can see one thing we have to understand, the problem that China convert their 30% of research into patents. India is only 6%. So the same thing we have to see in the case of Africa. And then when we are talking about the success factor, there are certain things which we have to look, like Shanghai Circle. There is a case study I think all of us should study. There are colleges in the Shanghai who tie up with the industry, and they are not taking problem from the industry, but they are giving them the solution, that these are the solutions which can be done, and industry is taking. They have more than 500 collaborations, and they are making millions. Second example from IIT Madras, we have just seen that now IIT Madras has a campus in Zanzibar as well. IIT Madras opened a research park. There are 200 startups who started from research and all are backed by the industry. So the problem which we have to understand that, we were discussing a lot that funding is one problem. Second, startups should be doing in South Africa. No, I am telling we have to, there is a study of CV Insight says that 30% of African startups fail and the patents don't get in the market because there is no market study. So we have to do a market study. We have to do combine efforts for this, not only for Africa. For an example, in my university, we have done a study with Brazil. We have trained 6 of our students, 6 of Brazilian students in incubation. And now 2 of Brazilian students have a product which has a better market fit in India. So now they are coming to India and launching their product. So we have to see that where the product can get launched and how we can make the patents out of research rather than just writing the research papers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to Professor Ghassan. How can African universities establish sustainable, mutual beneficial partnerships with industry, particularly in low-resource settings?
Once again, I mean, these issues are universal, not just for Africa. All universities across the globe can benefit from these opportunities. At least I can give you one example about Abu Dhabi University, where we set up what we call the Global Engagement Program and the Industry Engagement Program. In the Global Engagement Program, we have about 5,000 collaborators, many from African universities, and we are working on joint paper, joint research, and so on. The Industry Engagement Program has over 2,000 industries from the UAE and beyond, and this is where the industry can get involved. Now, partnerships would be very important. I think somebody mentioned today, I think the chairman, you chairman, mentioned about signing MOUs and collecting dust. It doesn't work. Partnerships takes time, effort, resources. Now with technology, using online facilities, AI, of course, partnerships are much easier, less expensive as well. But at the end of the day, you have to define what you want to get out of your KPIs. What are the KPIs you want to get? Is it the publications? Is it the impact you are creating? Is it the student exchange, staff exchange, faculty exchange? That have to be defined. And otherwise, we can sign MOUs as much as we want. They collect dust for us, and we do nothing with them. There must be some tangible benefits and KPIs.
Excellent, excellent. So we thought that this session will also include the audience. Is there anyone who wants to input in terms of the same question? Do you have any inputs regarding this question? If not, we'll move on to the next question. Okay, please. Can you give them the microphone? Please introduce yourself again so everybody knows. Yeah.
Vice President, Academic Administration in IIT Madras, Zanzibar. Now, two models which have served India well in the recent, two and a half decades on this issue of bridging academia and industry. And Dr. Singh mentioned one of them. It is the research park. So there are these two things I wanted to just spend a minute on each of them. The first one is the practice of starting incubators within the university setting. So this has now become, this started about 25 years ago in IIT Bombay, and it has now become common practice in all the IITs to have a business incubator housed inside the university. It's an independent organ, it's a Section 8 company within the government architecture. But then, it allows for the results from the laboratory to be immediately taken towards commercialization, because commercialization has various other aspects like market research, supply chains and business models and so on. So this is one aspect. The second one is this research park that IIT Madras set up, and now IIT Bombay has it, and several others are also looking at it. Now here, the industries are invited to set up research establishments within the university setting on very favorable terms, and in return for these favorable terms, they are expected to engage with the university in some defined ways. It may be providing internships to students, providing consultancy, taking consultancy services from the faculty. It may be sponsoring projects in the institute and so on. And it is necessary for the industry to invest in these types of interactions, because otherwise the favorable terms of transaction will not continue.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate your feedback. I'm just going to move back down to Professor Qureshi. How can curricular be better aligned with industry needs to foster collaboration beyond research? I know you've touched upon this, but if you can just answer this question again.
The basic thing is that the researcher in a university has to be, as I said, educated. He knows about intellectual property, patenting, all these things. And he has also to go and fish. I mean the word fishing. To go and fish for companies and industry or business which suits his research. This has to be done by individuals or leaders of groups of research. If this is done, then the institution at the end will have a basic critical volume of researchers who are interested in partnership with industry and with business. So the university first educates its people, knows the basics of the partnership, knows the complications of the partnership. I'm sure there are now professors and leaders in universities. They don't know what is the patenting procedure, what is the that is intellectual property of incubation. They don't know these things. When they know it, then they have to go and educate the others, the younger teachers, and then they go and fish for companies, because most of the companies now in Africa are not interested in research, because they are either producing research or producing products by patents taken from other companies, so they cannot change the formula, or they are doing transformational research from products, agricultural products to oil production or others, and this is, they want straightforward, economically valuable or economically feasible profit. So they want to go to the profit.
Thank
So
you,
the idea is
thank
to
you,
fish.
thank you, Professor. So,
Would you allow me, please?
Can
I
we-
want to answer our friend.
Yes,
because
please,
He
yeah.
raised a very, very important issue, in fact. When he was talking about incubation facilities, imagine if you have a university which has 10,000 students, and then you would have 10 students incubating their business or factory, still very, very small as percentage. Unless we have proper technology, innovation, science parks, where universities are co-located with major companies where the students can go learn the business, incubate their own, will be touching the tip of the iceberg. In terms of the research element, it's very interesting. The commercialization of research. You know, for every pound you spend on research, you need 13 pounds on commercialization. Who's going to pay for this? So if you have spent 1 million dirham on research, you need 130 million on commercialization. So there must be some funds somewhere. You need to put the mechanism in place. It's that easy for us to say, we're incubating businesses. 10 students at ADU have incubated their business successfully, but there are 10,000 who didn't. And we don't have the science park, unfortunately, not in the Arab region, that the way they exist in Europe, in France, in the UK, in the United States. You will see universities inside those innovation and science technology parks.
and where do they get their support from? Those from the UK?
I think it's a partnership between academia, between industry, between government, between funding bodies, and so on.
Right. Professor Ali Khatibi, we'll move on to the technology transfer and commercialization. What strategies have proven successful in fostering an entrepreneurial mindset among academics, in your view?
For my universities, we are entrepreneur universities, and we are one of the #1 private universities for entrepreneurship and accreditation. But when we look to entrepreneurship, it's not just looking from the business angle, but how to set up the mindset of the future graduate, have an entrepreneurship mindset. That is what industry is looking for it. And that is becoming challenges of how we do that. Yes, we can build up the entrepreneur, but where they get the funding? Because to set up any business, you need the funding. And that is what in my university we do. We support with the initial funding or seed money. We support them, we encourage them, we do give the facilities within the universities or outside the university. And what we need to look, we need to drive the entrepreneurship with the vision of the countries, of how the future SMEs is going to contribute to the economics of the country.
So when you think of entrepreneurial countries today, it's part of an ecosystem. It's not just education on its
Yes.
own. So who do you think is a leader in this, in the globe? So people are... they
Okay,
have
very easy if people that can say that the government will set up. I will look to it is how the university leadership is going to drive that. And that is a challenge. For example, my president himself is a social entrepreneur. He drive and he set the example. And by doing this, we are very happy to say that at least in average about 100 students, they will set up the very good businesses within the Malaysia market.
Interesting. But then you need an ecosystem beyond
Yes.
the academic, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, okay. So we'll move on to Dr. Sanjeet. What role do TTOs, technology transfer offices, play in commercializing academic findings, and how can university ensure they are effective?
Again, I'm saying, one thing we have to understand, as I said in the start as well. Again, I'll take the example of Africa when we said that there are only 5% research which get patented. So it means 95% of the research which either it's not aimed to be commercialized, or we have to decide that why we are writing. One thing you understand, the report says that 90% of the startups fail, only 10% success, less than 10%. Still they are getting funding. It means funding is not a problem. What we have to say, that whether we are mapping the need or not. The researchers, the students, the faculty who are doing some good research in Africa might be required in Asia. The research which is happening in Asia might be required in the Western countries. So what we have to do, if we can do a mapping, if we can start joint incubators, if we can start joint research parks, if we can start joint TTOs, which is very much possible, and even I can request QS that they can take this kind of initiative. If under their umbrella we can start where multi-countries can come together and start TTOs, I think that's going to solve the problem, and the percentage of tech transfer will increase up to a very higher level, because they are not getting commercialized, because they are not getting mapped, they are not going at the proper place.
Interesting. So going back to the audience again, is there anyone who wants to add to this, please? There's two. Oh, there's three? Okay. Is that okay, panelists? Okay. Please, Dr. Amir.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you for the panel members there. Very interesting session. And I think bridging the gap between the academia and the industry, I fully agree with Dr. Ghassan when he said that we need to speak the same language that the industry. If you look at the industry, they are expecting our graduates, but also they are expecting our graduate with a certain level or skills that will fit in their business. And there are ways really to do that. One of them, which I see it very effective, and we have tried already that at Sultan Qaboos University in Oman, is first of all, get involvement of our faculty member to the industry. And that can be done with different ways. One of them is the secondment of faculty member in the industry.
That's nice.
That will help the faculty member to understand what the industry is expecting from the academia. The other thing also, the training of the students, summer training, internship in the industry. Again, that will help to improve in that side. Also inviting the industry people, qualified people, to come and talk to the students in the classroom. Again, that's another mechanism to improve that relationship. I think with all that together, definitely will help and will improve that relationship, and it will come up with the win-win to both sides. The industry will benefit from the expertise that's available in the academia, and at the same time also the universities will benefit from the support that would receive definitely from the industry.
Very interesting. Thank you for sharing. And also it's very sustainable. It's not just a quick win, but it's very sustainable for the long run. I think there's two more over here. I just want to add also having part-time lecturers probably from industry is also beneficial. Please.
Yeah, so I'm Naresh Chadaja from Marwadi University, India. One question which was asked, that is in Africa really rising? I would like to acknowledge that we have 2,000 students from Africa at our university, around 15% strength. But when we look at the gold medals, out of 54 gold medals, more than 14 goes to students from Africa. So that means there is a huge potential. Students are very good. They want to do the research. While we see many students from healthcare and pharmacy and all background coming back to Africa and contribute, we see a less inclined students in IT and related programs. So my question to sir over there, that India is also having that problem that you can't give jobs to all those who pass out of university. So they have a student startup policies where, student startups are given very well recognition, lot of incentive. Is there anything that is happening in Africa which is promoting students who are into IT or related field to set up their startups or, grow their career in
Is
IT?
that's addressed to Dr. Qureshi?
Yeah.
Dr. Qureshi, please.
Is there any startup related initiative in Africa taken for IT related programs?
First, I'd like to respond to the first question, that the industry has to be included, itself. Industries which are around one university, representative of that university, either owners or managers, have to be included in committees. Let us say there is an institute for technology transfer in the university,
Right.
and then the university has to include some of these people in the committees within the faculty, so that they will feel that they are part of the university. The other question, I think I have no basis of answering that one.
Is there anybody on the panelists would like to respond?
Please,
Professor
I mean,
Hassan?
you're right about IT and the rest. For me, this generation Z, the degree itself is almost irrelevant, believe me. Whether it's IT, psychology, they are self-learners. The most important thing for us is to give them the extra skills, the employability skills needed, the emotional intelligence, the digital intelligence, the social intelligence, and so on. So it's a completely different generation. I think because it's a generation of entrepreneurs, I can see a lot of those young guys setting up their own businesses. Of course, they will fail or they will succeed, but you will see a culture of entrepreneurship. On the technology transfer issue, by the way, unless you take your research into the patent stage and move it into commercialization, then you're doing nothing. And this is reality. And this takes time, it takes effort. You need experienced people to be able to help you to register your patent. It's not, our friend from Oman, when he mentioned about the language, we don't speak the language. Technology officers, they don't, technology transfer officers, they don't speak the language needed by the patent agencies or whatever. So you need those individuals. The most important thing is that sometimes from invention, in universities we invent, but we don't innovate, because from invention to innovation, it could take up to 50 years. If you take the color TV, from the idea of having a TV, in black and white, to color TV, it took 50 years. It took 49 years. So innovation takes time. The cycle is very, very long. But once again, you mentioned the word ecosystem. Ecosystem means you breathe innovation. When you go into a university, you see in this park, companies based here, technology transfer offices there, university there, students moving between these offices. Yes, there's an ecosystem. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist in our part of the world and in Africa. And unless we invest, and this investment, Dr. Ali was absolutely right, you need the investor to do it. It could be government, it could be private sector, but unless we have these technology parks, we can talk about the ecosystem as much as we have been talking about it for 30 years. Nothing happened.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I think there's one more question here. Sorry, Professor. Yeah.
I think in every university we keep talking about building the entrepreneurship ecosystem, everything. But to me, it's very simple. If we take up each university, how many of the academic staff that are updated themselves or their entrepreneur mindset? That is our challenges. For example, if I take my own son, he says, oh, the university is nothing, it's a piece of the paper. And his mind, today he's developed a lot of games for the Googles, he do it on his own. He says, I'm not learning anything on universities. So that is our challenges is, we keep pushing back to our student, but we never talk about upgrading ourselves. And that is what I believe that we should do it as a
So we are very traditional.
I think it's absolutely right, really, because now when you look at the digital gap is between the elderly faculty and the students. So we keep telling them, use AI, don't plagiarize. They have 3 million techniques to do it. We don't know how to do it ourselves. We tell them about entrepreneurships. They are born entrepreneurs, and we are not, and we are teaching them about. So the entrepreneurship gap is between the student and the faculty. To be honest, the upskilling of faculty, it should be a priority before we educate our students. Those students are born learners. They are born to learn. They know how to do it. We don't know.
Absolutely. I would love to hear Dr. Ahmed from SQU give us a feedback on that, because this is his area, AI and but let's have your response.
Thank you very much for this discussion. My name is Dr. Noor Atatra from Al Ain University. I would like to emphasize about one important thing which has been mentioned. A lot of ideas which I think they were valuable in the discussion, but I would like to shed the light on the role of governments to bring investment or funding to universities. Now, when we are talking about Africa as a model, as you know, Africa is attracting a lot of investments from around the globe, from China, from Europe, from North America. So a lot of investment is being flooded to Africa in all fields. Like if we are talking about Zanzibar, where we are, a lot of investment into tourism. So what I want to see or to give as a message, governments, they have to encourage investors to put certain percentage of their investments into research and development. And this would help to increase funding into universities, bringing more funding into universities. And I was, by the way, really happy about this summit has been under the patronage of President of Zanzibar, because it's very important for decision maker to know about these discussions. Absolutely. On the other hand, as universities and academic institutes, they need to be ready with all initiatives which you mentioned, like incubators, like research offices. They need to be ready for these funding to be injected into their system.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Can I move on to the panel and then I'll get back to you? Yeah, thank you so much. So we're just going to move on to Professor Qureshi. How can African universities strengthen IP policies to balance research protection with commercial opportunity? Would you like to? Anybody?
Yes, African universities need to learn about intellectual property, all aspects of intellectual property. And in this case, it is not a matter of learning that for the purpose of industry, the purpose of producing quality research. And in this case, I would like to see intellectual property lessons being given in every university. Just like our new Prime Minister in Sudan was the IBO director. So this is why he says that, okay, intellectual property has to come in the curriculum of each university. The management of intellectual property in all aspects has to come there. So it has to be ordained or regulated by the ministry or by the controlling or the governing bodies. Among them are the leaders of higher education. So it has to be first introduced to this university, and then there is an assistance and continuous support of the people who observe it, and continuous reminding for the people who disobserve that particular thing, which is very important now. Originality depends on observing intellectual property.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Professor Ghassan, what national or regional policies could help accelerate effective knowledge transfer?
Of course, you need, national policies are very, very important. At least you need an national innovation strategy to start thinking about technology transfer and knowledge transfer. Universities have to develop their own strategies, but if they don't exist at national level, you'll be very, very limited, and take my word for this one. I mean, when you talk about IPR is intellectual property right. It's an important aspect. Not many faculty and students understand it. Very, very few, in fact. And unless you start creating awareness. But if there was a national policy regarding IPR and the rest, it would become much, much easier. I think creating strategies at national level, this is what happened in the West, and this is how they encourage universities to create more patents, set up innovation parks, and so on. In terms of the research funding, the policy regarding research funding, unfortunately, research funding in the region, in our region in Africa, is very, very embryonic, very, very limited. You cannot make big difference with the research funding we receive. This is reality. Unless we start working very closely with the industry to convince them that we are good, we can deliver something good for you. But unless we provide figures about the economic impact of universities, the industry will never take us seriously. If you say to them, Abu Dhabi University can create up to $500,000 in terms of economic activities in the UAE, then they will start believing on you. But you have to quantify it. In the UK, when they had the Research Excellence Framework, they added the impact. But not the academic impact is straightforward. Number of publication, quality of publication, number of citations. And we all know that, on average, 8 people across the globe read a referee journal paper. So very minimal. While when you start creating economic impact and you can measure it and tell people about it, industry will come to you, for sure.
Amazing, very interesting. Do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, thank you. It's a bit controversial question, but let's see if we can tackle it. You see, Africa, and maybe not Africa alone, the developing world, has become, for want of a better word, a dumping ground for, finished products from different countries. It's not only Africa. I was in Brazil 2 weeks ago. I see the same phenomenon. All kinds of new cars are flooding the streets in Africa, right? All kinds of new cell phones flooding the stores in Africa at very cheap prices. Solar, same. Solar product, same in Africa. And that extends for other countries outside Africa in the developing world. Water technologies, same. Now the question is, I can surmise that actually, that the reason for this extreme dumping that we see, and that's just my word, dumping, probably it's not the right word, but I'm just using it, is maybe coming from either lack of regulatory frameworks or very weak ones in developing countries. Now, the question is to the panel, how is that going? How does that, in fact, affect innovation? If we can always buy cheap things off the shelf from country X, country Y, why should we invest in thinking deeper and innovating and, inventing our own things? How is that conflict resolved within the entire geopolitical relationships that we have as Africa and other countries? I hope
Thank you.
it's not cryptic.
Doctor, where are you from? Just wondering.
South Africa.
South Africa. Very good. Thank you. Anyone want to take up the response?
If we look into any country, as you mentioned, is going to be dumping of the product from other countries, normally I will blame it to the people, all right? Because we want the easy life, all right? We are not hungry. And if we don't develop the culture to be hungry, all right, it's going to be challenges. For example, today we keep talking about China. China policy is very easy. If you look to it, government, they never support. You want to be successful, you work hard. And they develop the cultures of people, they need to work hard. they need to study harder. Then they can see the fruit is going to come. So what is important is we need to make the nations to become the hungry, not the keep providing the food. Yes, when you provide the food, it's easy, we enjoy it, and it's going to come. So that is a big challenge for any governments to play the role of how to make the nations to become the hungry. Because once you're hungry, you're going to look for the food. And innovation will come from there.
And you know, one-line answer is until unless we'll not become the innovator, we will be the dumping ground. You see any country, they were the dumping ground until unless they start the innovation. Then start selling the world and people came to them. You will see hundreds of examples. So we have to become innovator. And as you know, my colleague was saying that we have a student back in India and we see that South African students have that caliber. So government need to fund them, need to support them and make them innovators so that South Africa should start, or African countries should start exporting the technology rather than the dumping ground.
Can I add one thing, please? It's what Nelson Mandela has said. I don't want the technology to send me water pumps. I want my people to know how to use them so they can learn. The most important thing, the people are the real assets in Africa and across the globe. And those are the people who are going to produce the product specific for them. His Excellency, the Chairman of the Association of African Universities, when he said about the priorities, he started with agriculture. Agriculture is a golden area for us in this region, and we should develop the tools to support us in this area. Of course, the regulatory bodies play a major role, no question about it. I gave the example from the UAE, when the Commission for Academic Accreditation said to us, you have to work with industry and you have a weighting of 20%, we can stop you as a university, you have no choice but to do it. So the regulatory bodies will play a role, no question about it.
Thank you. Can we take another question? You are okay about that? In the back?
Well, thank you very much. This is not a question. It's a short comment from the challenges of people who head institutions where students have been taught, taking degrees. We all know that most knowledge is local. The economy of most communities are based on the SMEs, the small, medium-scale industries, within those communities. Or you find out that in many of our countries in Africa, and I make bold to say this very specifically about Nigeria, where I'm coming from, there are not enough of those small and medium-scale industries that are really, really technological, more than service industries, to serve as counterparts to the training institutions within the vicinity. So sometimes you even have the students who need to go on industrial training, who need to have industrial experience, and they don't have enough places to send them, to go and have the type of industrial experience that they will need to be industry ready, even when they're out of the institutions. And you also have a very serious shortage, of these kind of industries impacting on the work that is going on in the university in terms of curriculum involvement, being guest lecturers and all of that. So it all boils down to the fact that the economies of many of our cities and our communities must really improve to allow many SMEs to develop that are technological in orientation, more than service industries where they just do buying and selling. All you find in most communities are buying and selling oriented, SMEs. And they will impact the universities very little, and the university have nothing really so much to gain from them. I guess that's where the issue of leadership, the economy, and what the focus of the country at any point in time will look like. Otherwise, we'll keep training students who have very little industrial experience, even as of the time that they are leaving the institutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I usually have conversations with my colleagues from the university, and we always say that many successful economies are driven by education. But I see in our part of the world, or other parts of the world, they're very much waiting for industry to dictate. And I feel in my opinion, this is another discussion and maybe another panel discussion that we can have, is that perhaps it is time that education rolls up its sleeves and start having confidence in ourselves, in our abilities, and not to wait on others. So when you were talking about the dumping ground, I feel you, I understand where you're coming from, but I think if you have confidence in your people, confidence in yourself, stop waiting for others, as Dr. Sanjeet said, and run for it. I think give people the freedom. I come to Zanzibar very often, and I'm so inspired by the people of Zanzibar, the youth of Zanzibar, and their potential. Once we have belief in them, I'm sure the sky's the limit for all of you. But I'm not going to continue now. I'm just going to have a final...
But Dr. Aisha, I think
Yes.
our current curriculum is not fit to bridge the gap between industry and academia, and this is reality. The current curriculum in primary schools and high schools, it's not fit for the purpose of helping us close this gap. We need to revamp educational learning outcomes at school level and university level. I want to ask a question. Why not somebody from industry goes and talk to kids in high school, telling them about the joy of working in industry, the pleasure, the innovation, etc. We wait for them until they reach the university. We invite somebody from industry, they get excited for a day or two, and then they forget about it completely. So the revamping of the curriculum at school and university level now is a priority.
Absolutely, absolutely. Actually, in our part of the world, we have INJAZ, right, which is the Junior Achievement Program, where we have volunteers from the corporate world going into, but it's a valid point. I'm sorry, because of time, Professor?
I think one of the learning process for every of us is we look how the Japanese are doing. For the first 4 years, from kindergarten to a school, they never teach ABCD to them. They teach the values, they teach everything to them, survival and everything.
Innovation.
And everything is coming from the kindergarten time. Not for a schooling, but a schooling parents, they have pampered the kids and they're not going to change. I think we need to go back from the groundwork and change it, and the future will change, rather than we blame the universities and so on. Thank you.
And that is why MCBS's motto is from KG to PhD and beyond. Okay, so one final round of question for all of you. What one actionable step should universities take today to bridge the academia industry gap in Africa? We'll start with you, Dr. Sanjeet.
I'll just answer in 2 lines because this lunchtime is here. So I say all the stakeholders should come on a table. We say academia, as academicians, I also say that, industry people, they don't come and tell us. Industry people say you don't come and ask us. At the same time, student also say that you don't ask what I want to learn. So unless all of us will come on a table and we'll do a discussion as we are doing here, this discussion will keep going. So we have to take all stakeholder brainstorming, and government should also be a part, and society. So the 5 stakeholders, student, academia, industry, government, and society, you take them, do the brainstorming, result will come out.
Thank you very much.
Just I shared it, what we do in my university. I brought it about 4 years ago, the idea, immediately after COVID. We have stopped all the projects and at the undergraduate and MBA. We said we don't want you to just simply you do the research, collect the data, and everything must be industry problem solving. Go back to industry, pick up the problems, depends on the level you are in, and solve the problem and get the approval from industry, what you have shared it, they appreciate it, and submit it, and you get grade. And I think by doing this, we can close the gap between the industry and the academic. Thank you.
I think, for me, it's a leadership issue. If you have the leadership of the universities, the leadership of the industry, and the leadership of the government coming together, they will make a very, very big difference. Otherwise, we'll be revisiting this topic next year and the year after, and the gap will be widening instead of closing.
The universities have to look into the community around them. If the community living on agricultural products, then it has to concentrate on research that helps that community. If they are living on mining, any type of mining, chrome, gold, anything, so they have to concentrate on that. This is the easiest thing to do in Africa. Of course, this has to have the commitment of the leadership that they are in an area which requires special attention, and it is part of their social responsibility or social accountability to the community is to look at their own problems and try to help them.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for an inspiring session and event. Thank you. Should we take a group picture? Thank you to our wonderful speakers for the discussion. It's now time for lunch. Please head into the exhibition hall for refreshment. Kindly note, our afternoon session will resume at 2 p.m. After lunch, we look forward to an exciting debate on whether traditional university degrees truly prepare Africa's youth for real jobs, followed by a dynamic discussion on future skills and workforce readiness across the continent. In the meantime, don't forget to share your summit moments on social media, from standout photos to key insights and light bulb moments. We can't wait to see your perspective. Enjoy your break.
Babu anasema sio betu ulikuwa